El Campo de Cahuenga is one of the most historic sites in the state of California. It was here, once the grounds of the San Fernando mission, but later owned by the Pico family, that Lieutenant Colonel John Charles Fremont arrived from Monterey with 450 men on January 11th, 1847, to end the Mexican-American War on the Northern Front and bring the territory into the Union with a treaty of peace and conciliation. Fremont was acting under orders sent to him by President James K. Polk and delivered by a secret agent, Archibald Gillespie, who accompanied Fremont on his mission to California. Upon their arrival, they found an unusually dangerous situation. Andres Pico had led a revolt of Mexican war prisoners against Commodore Robert F. Stockton's naval forces at Los Angeles and had been defeated. However, Pico, rather than surrender, for Stockton wanted him hanged for parole violation, was leading the revolt. Among Fremont's loyal battalion was Jesus Pico, a cousin of Andres, and he was able to arrange a meeting between the men.
It is no secret throughout the territory, Californians want an end to bloodshed. They are tired of revolutions. Also, they are threatened with a takeover by England through an arrangement with Mexico, who owes England vast sums of money. They do not want to be ruled by a monarchy, as you well know. They wish to join with America to enjoy freedom and independence, prosperity, and free trade.
What you say may be true, but you cannot blame me as a loyal Mexican for making one last stand against the American forces. After all, the war between us continues along the border in Texas and in Mexico City, and who knows how it will end. It's true also that my vaqueros were defeated by Commodore Stockton's forces, and I acknowledge that defeat. But I should not be hanged.
Then let us work together to present a treaty to Commodore Stockton that will bring peace and conciliation and end this bloodshed for all of us.
So it was that the two men worked together to produce what we know today as the capitulation of Cahuenga.
Article 1. The commissioners, on the part of the Californians, agree that their entire force shall, on presentation of themselves to Lieutenant Colonel Fremont, deliver up their artillery and public arms, and they shall return peaceably to their homes, conforming to the laws and regulations of the United States, and not again take up arms during the war between the United States and Mexico, but will assist and aid in placing the country in a state of peace and tranquility.
The commissioners, on the part of Lieutenant Colonel Fremont, agree and bound themselves to the fulfillment of this first article by the Californians, that they shall be guaranteed protection of life and property, whether on parole or otherwise.
Pico's men did indeed turn over their arms, including 2 pieces of artillery captured from General Stephen Watts Kearny at the Battle of San Pasqual. Kearny and his Army of the West had only recently arrived in California to join Commodore Stockton's naval forces, and en route from San Diego to Los Angeles had been attacked by Pico's forces, severely wounded and utterly defeated. 2, the loss of a cannon was considered a disgrace in any army. However, Pico's vaqueros were magnificent horsemen. They could ride like the wind and perform unusual feats of skill. They also used lances as easily as dinner forks, nor did they have to reload them. Kearny was unprepared for such soldiers.
Article 3. That until a treaty of peace be made and signed,
perhaps one of the most generous commitments made by Fremont now follows, and it would not go unnoticed by his superiors.
Article 5. That in virtue of the aforesaid articles, equal rights and privileges are vouchsafed to every citizen of California as are enjoyed by the citizens of the United States of America.
Article 6. All officers, citizens, foreigners, or others shall receive the protection guaranteed by the second article.
Article 7. This capitulation is intended to be no bar in effecting such arrangements as may, in the future, be injustice required by concrete law.
The treaty was also officially signed January 13th, 1847 by P.B. Redding, William H. Russell, and Lewis McLean, Jr. of Fremont's California Battalion, and by Antonio Carrillo and Agustin Oliveira of the Escuadrón en Jefe de las Fuerzas Nacionales in California. 3 days later, an additional article was added to the treaty and officially signed as follows. All officers, citizens, and others of the United States and of naturalized citizens of Mexico are by this foregoing capitulation cancelled, and every condition of said paroles from and after this date are of no further force and effect, and all prisoners of both parties are hereby released.
Hooray!
While all had gone well up to this point, fireworks began when the treaty was later submitted to Commodore Robert M. Stockton.
Colonel Fremont, you have been entirely too generous. Sir, you know perfectly well that I intended to hang Pico when he broke his parole and rebelled and encouraged others to break their parole and rebel. He dishonored himself and he dishonored them. And by what authority does he bring upon himself the title of Commandante?
Yes, sir, I know, sir. But Pico would have never met with me at the table if he had thought you were still going to hang him. He would have stayed in hiding and no doubt continued to raise troops to fight again. And as you also know, sir, our Commander-in-Chief, President Polk, wants to put an end to this front of the war. Our flag has been flying over the territory since July 7th, when the California Battalion successfully routed Castro's forces.
And I commend you, sir, and your men on a job well done. But, sir, how can you grant to Mexican citizens the rights and privileges of American citizenship when we are still at war with Mexico? You have exceeded yourself, sir.
But, sir, as you also know, President Polk wishes to close this northern front of the war with Mexico and bring peace and conciliation among Californians who only want to join the Union. They are tired of being ruled by a Mexican government that is too far away to know their problems, to pay high taxes, to support military troops located here, and they have no knowledge of what they are doing.
That may well be, sir.
But, sir, aren't you also anxious to join at the front of the war our American troops? Now is your opportunity.
This rebellion of Pico's did cause me to postpone our invasion of the west coast of Mexico. This, I suppose, may now recommence. You are dismissed, sir. After much study and interviewing Pico personally and finding him respectful and even contrite, I have decided to accept the treaty as written. The following dispatch to the Secretary of the Navy on January 15th. Sir, I have the honor to inform you of the arrival of Lieutenant Colonel Fremont at this place with 400 men, and that some of the insurgents have made their escape to Sonora, and that the rest have surrendered their arms. Immediately after the battles of the 8th and 9th in Los Angeles, they began to disperse, and I'm sorry to say that their leader, Jose M. Flores, made his escape, and that the others have been pardoned by a capitulation agreed upon by Lieutenant Colonel Fremont. I have thought it best to approve it. I am glad to say that by the capitulation, we have recovered the artillery taken by the insurgents in the sad defeat of General Kearny at San Pasqual. The territory of California is again tranquil, and the civil government formed by me is again in operation in the places where it was not interrupted by insurgents. Colonel Fremont now has 500 men, an increase in his battalion, which will be quite sufficient to preserve the peace of the territory, and I will immediately withdraw my sailors and Marines and sail as soon as possible for the coast of Mexico, where I hope they will give a good account of themselves.
No hostile arm was ever again lifted within the limits of the state, and Fremont's treaty did indeed secure peace and conciliation. It was faithfully recorded that the final conquest of California could not have been consummated without the Treaty of El Campo de Cahuenga, a bloody, vexatious, and predatory warfare would surely have continued for an indefinite length of time. The whole western slope of the Sierra Nevada would have afforded safe retreats inaccessible to naval and even regular military forces, from which ravaging parties would have rushed down upon the plains, and where insurrectionary movements would have been perpetual. The Californians were so happy that their ordeal was over that their children danced and sang songs to Colonel Fremont. Poets also sang his praises. Before leaving the territory for Mexico, Commodore Stockton appointed Fremont governor of the territory, and the Californians cheered. Thus there is a happy ending to the Treaty of El Campo de Cahuenga, but it is by no means the end of Fremont's continuing and most interesting life story. In 1849, the Californians elected him their first United States Senator, and as such he went to Washington, D.C. and finally succeeded in having the United States Congress declare California the 31st state in the Union, a free state without slavery! In 1856, the Californians also enthusiastically backed Fremont as their first presidential candidate, nominated by the new Republican Party. They campaigned for him as the young eagle of the West. Abraham Lincoln, who was nearly his running mate, campaigned for him over 90 times with the slogan, "Free speech, free press, free soil, free labor." While he did not win the election, he paved the way for Lincoln's election, and in 1860, the eventual end of slavery. During the Civil War that followed, Fremont fought with the Union forces as an Army general for an even more exciting career. In 1888, a banquet was held in Fremont's honor by the state's prominent leaders, who gave him a standing ovation. Senator R.F. Del Valle arose and announced that because of his great service to the state, both as pathfinder and peacemaker, California was declared his monument, and so it is to this day. And ladies and gentlemen, then, I give to you Colonel, General, Governor, Senator, Pathfinder, the young eagle of the West, John C. Fremont! But not only him, a man of wisdom and of honor, Senor Andres Pico. And indeed a man of foresight and forbearance, Commodore Robert F. Stockton. And with that, I would like to break character and give some names. Lieutenant Colonel John C. Fremont is portrayed by Michael McFerrin. Andres Pico is Jerry Reyes. Your obedient servant, William C. Howard. And I would like to bring up to the lectern Mr. Walter Nelson. I want to say a personal thing. This has been an honor for several years to be the narrator of this reenactment. A couple of years ago, we suffered a very deep loss, and I would like Walter to say something about that.
Thank you, Bill. For the first 10 years of this program, our John C. Fremont was played by a dear friend of mine, Kent Elofsson. And Kent passed away a couple of years ago. And among his many talents, he was an excellent costumer. And he made his own, sewed his own Fremont uniform, which will now be presented as a donation to the Campo and be put on display with appropriate historically correct insignia and so forth to present the uniform that would have been worn by Lieutenant Colonel John C. Fremont. And I make this donation on behalf of Jeff Baziri, a friend of Kent Elofsson, who inherited this uniform. Thank you very much.